More than 100 humanitarian groups have signed a letter calling on Israel to stop what they call the weaponization of aid into Gaza. The NGOs say they haven't been able to deliver supplies for months. They say new Israeli rules are preventing the delivery of life-saving food and medicines, which are stuck in warehouses on Gaza's borders. The letter calls on Israel to open all land crossings and ease restrictions. Israel denies it's causing hunger in Gaza. Alex de Waal is the executive director of the World Peace Foundation and one of the world's leading experts on famine and conflict. And DW asked him to explain the process of legally declaring an actual famine in Gaza.
For about 20 years, the United Nations has adopted a particular metric and definition of famine that requires a lot of data, information about acute food insecurity, what people are eating and what they're doing to get that food, child malnutrition, the levels of children who are severely malnourished, and also death rates, whether they have been pushed up related to hunger and disease. And in the absence of really reliable evidence, it's very, very hard for them to make a famine determination. But on the other hand, the members of the UN's famine, and it's an independent body that, but serving the UN, the Famine Review Committee, are also humanitarians with decades of experience, and they can see the symptoms of mass starvation, of famine. They're very familiar with these, just as your physician doesn't need to send all your blood off to be tested in order to know what kind of condition you have. And what we see, and what we've seen in the last few weeks in Gaza, are those unmistakable symptoms of a society descending into famine, of the numbers of children who are very, very malnourished and on the brink of death. And then the societal symptom of people scrabbling for food, of fighting for food, of society breaking down because people are just so hungry they can do nothing else but fight for food.
That was Alex de Waal. DW's Emily Gordine has more details on what the over 100 aid agencies are alleging.
Well, these groups are essentially alleging that Israel is obstructing the delivery of aid into Gaza and doing so on purpose. They say that Israel has been rejecting requests to bring life-saving goods to Gaza because they are, quote, not authorized to do so. Now, these are organizations who have been working in Gaza for decades. They are trusted among the communities. And now, why are they not being let into Gaza? Well, it comes down to Israeli restrictions and vetting processes that were put in place a few months ago. Israeli authorities say that this is aimed at making sure Hamas doesn't get their hands on aid. Now, this is a claim that Israeli officials have been making throughout this conflict without providing necessary evidence to substantiate these claims. And humanitarian organizations essentially say that their access is being denied on, quote, vague and politicized criteria, such as alleged, quote, delegitimization of the state of Israel, which could essentially also just mean criticizing Israeli policies in regard to Gaza. Now, Israeli authorities have rejected these accusations. They have made Hamas responsible for creating a situation of hunger in Gaza. Ultimately, these aid organizations that signed this letter, though, say that the country that controls the aid that goes into Gaza is Israel. And because they have not been able to get in, it means that hospitals across Gaza go without necessary supplies, and people are essentially dying of hunger and other preventable diseases.
Meanwhile, we know that Israel is moving ahead with its plans to occupy Gaza City. What's the latest there?
Yeah, yesterday the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, essentially approved a preliminary framework to conquer all of Gaza. It will require the call-up of about 80 to 100,000 reservists by means of emergency call-up order, this according to Hebrew media in Israel. Ahead of the launch of this operation, we are already witnessing more bombardments across Gaza. Yesterday, 89 Palestinians were killed by Israeli attacks. Dozens of them were recorded in Gaza City, which is also at the heart of this takeover plan by Israel. Among those killed were 5 children who were sheltering in a tent. We also saw reports of deadly incidents at aid distribution sites that are run by the US and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has come under increased criticism over the course of this conflict, as it is seen as providing militarized aid to people. And now all of this, of course, is happening as humanitarian organizations say hunger and famine is unfolding in Gaza. Now we know from the Israeli authorities that about 300 to 400 aid trucks have now been getting into Gaza per day over the last week or so. This after also a lot of international pressure to let more aid into Gaza. But it still falls short of the 600 aid trucks that the UN says are necessary every day to get into Gaza.
That was DW correspondent Emily Gordine from Jerusalem. Thanks for that, Emily.
Amande Bazerolle is with Doctors Without Borders, and she's the emergency coordinator in Gaza. She joins me now from Paris. Welcome. Now, your organization, Doctors Without Borders, signed this letter. Help us understand why.
But it's been very difficult at the moment to enter anything in Gaza. As you can see, we are one of the very few organizations who are able to enter some material and some supplies, but definitely not enough compared to the volume of the need that we have in Gaza today. We're talking about the starvation, but we're also at the time when there has never been as many injured and deaths due to activities from the Israeli forces in Gaza, either at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution point, either from all the military activities that are happening since the beginning of the war. So right now, there's a massive number of people who need support, who need supplies, who need aid, who need food, who needs water, and need to have healthcare services provided. And very few organizations are able to do it at the moment because of all the impediments that are applied by the Israeli authorities at the moment on all the humanitarian organizations.
The Israeli government says that organizations which were blocked from delivering aid failed to meet, quote, security requirements preventing Hamas involvement. What do you make of that statement?
So, we have never witnessed that, and not only us is saying it. We have USAID, so the US Agency for Development, International Development, who's saying the same thing in a report that was published in end of July, and that was also confirmed by some Israeli military as well. So there's no proof of what has been said, and we have never witnessed that. There was 400 distribution points, and the humanitarians were delivering the aid in hands, of the population. So if there's any diversion, it was after.
Right.
But again, there's no proof, and there's a lot of claims that have never been shown with any kind of proof.
You know, Israel basically requires organizations to hand over lists of their donors and those Palestinian staff that are working for those organizations. Why is that something that aid groups aren't willing to do?
But today, the position of Israel is not operating, or is willing to operate, but not to take the responsibilities as the occupying party in Gaza. So they want to have the benefit of it without having all the constraints. So it's today it's one of the warring party, and they're asking us to hand over the list of the staff when we have seen that more than 500 health workers and humanitarian workers have been killed in Gaza. We have seen what happened to our colleagues of PRCS, of the Palestinian Red Crescent. We have been directly targeted. So we have, of course, concern. And in any other country, never ever we have been asked to deliver the list of our staff for a registration. For other purposes, when you have taxes, and again, Israelis are not the one in charge today of Gaza,
right.
But otherwise, we would like to know what is the reason and the purpose and the use that will be done with that list.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Amande Bazerolle, Doctors Without Borders Emergency Coordinator. Thanks so much for joining us.